Yes, all right. So the January 12th meeting of the Rockport School Committee is now in session. First item, call to order and introductions. The meeting is being recorded tonight, as it always is, and will be available for playback later. Move to the approval of the December 7th minutes. I believe, Kathy, you weren't here for that. So is there anyone who wanted to make corrections or amendments to those meeting minutes? Looks no. So do we have a motion to approve the December 7th minutes as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Great. Public comment. I'm not sure we have... No, I guess not. No one wishes to comment on the items on our agenda for tonight. There's no correspondence. Personnel. We have an item.
We do.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to let you go.
Well, yeah, why don't you go? Because typically we have the superintendent.
Happy to. So we'd like to thank Keisha Murray for her service in the district. She has resigned from her position as a middle school English teacher, as well as Allison Beal. Thank you for your service. She has resigned from her position as an elementary school paraprofessional. We have recently appointed Marion Dean to the position of general nutrition worker. Peter Nelson joins us as the position of elementary school paraprofessional. Welcome to Margaret Hale. She has been appointed to the position of bus driver and co-transportation coordinator. Welcome to Tiffany Cotting. She was appointed to the position of elementary school monitor and crossing guard. And welcome to Catherine Cook, who was appointed to the position of high school tutor recently. So thank you to the first two for your service, and welcome to everybody else.
That's great. So Josh, I think that means you're on deck with the Share the Success update from the Student Advisory Committee rep.
Yeah, we have a little bit of a hodgepodge of stuff because we haven't been here for a while. So I'll start with the elementary school. The teachers and students discussed ALICE procedures recently, and away, for elementary schoolers, of course. It was the 80th day of school. I don't know which day exactly, but last week, and the staff and students dressed up in 80s attire to celebrate. The staff have been taking part in the Lead for Literacy program, professional development, and the teachers in 2nd, 3rd, and 1 from 4th took part in training on the FOSS science program. In the middle school, they had, in the high school as well, we both had our own separate door decorating competitions for the holidays. I should know who won ours. I don't know who won ours. Do you know? Senior room won something. Yeah, there's a bunch. I don't know. I like Miss Ferrazzi's Drama Llamas one. She put a llama on her door. In the middle school, Mr. Ori's 7th grade homeroom won, followed by Mix Young and Miss Hildreth. In their December Penny Challenge, they raised over $500 for Cape Ann Animal Aid. And students last week or something held a fundraiser at the bowling alley for their trip to the Dominican Republic over February break. Other stuff in the high school, the RHS students met with 8th graders to discuss their transition to high school. We also reviewed ALICE procedures at our assembly. Dual enrollment classes are starting for the spring semester with North Shore Community College and Salem State. Winter sports are going strong with hockey and basketball. I don't know when all their games are, but they're all posted on the website, I'm assuming. And the pep band is recently played at the basketball game. So
Great. Thank you, Josh. That's great. Subcommittee updates. Not sure that we have any. Or...
No, I don't. Do you have any updates on the policy?
I do. As a matter of fact, the chair has just recently signed the contract, and then so we will be putting a schedule together to start as soon as we sent the contract today, and I'll start meeting. And what I'll do is give regular updates here as we meet, and then every time we meet, then we'll pull the subcommittee together to do a follow-up after that. Yep. Yep.
Okay. Good. So the next item for the next two meetings, we'll be talking in detail about the fiscal year 24 budget. In this first session, we're really going to be focusing on enhancements that don't have a financial impact. So these would be additions to our curriculum and in some cases positions that may be changing but have no net effect on the budget. In our second meeting, which will take place next Thursday, That'll be a more difficult discussion because it really addresses the $320,000 budget gap and how the senior administrative staff with Dr. Branco in the lead have attempted to resolve that, and they'll be looking for our input and approval on that. So, Mark, I'll turn it over to you for the first half of this discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a reminder for the committee and the public again that, you know, the school committee budget does represent our students. We are solely charged as a committee with approving and submitting this budget to the town voters for approval, but this is the one group of constituents that, you know, does not get their own voice. So consequently, that is up to us to make sure we ensure that happens. District leadership team has been very, very busy and collaboratively developing this budget for the past 8 to 9 weeks now. We've used a bottom-up, zero-based budget process. We did not just roll numbers forward. We took a deep dive into the needs of the district. We looked at enrollment. We looked at staffing patterns. We looked at programming to make some really good decisions around how we can be fiscally responsible or fiscally conservative and at the same time continue to put our best foot forward for our students. I think what's important to understand is a lot of people struggle with those two things. They either think you can save money in an organization or you can spend money and improve. And we disagree. We believe we can do both. We believe we can get sort of lean and mean and get really responsible with the budgeting, and we can still take a look at the assets that we have at our disposal to provide our students with the best programming possible. So we have 2 goals that we'll present to you tonight and next week. And you'll see some celebratory information, and then you'll see some difficult conversations. And we just have to remind ourselves, as the leadership team and I have been doing for 9 weeks now, that those 2 things have to sort of marry in order to positively move forward as a school district. I sort of touched upon the first paragraph, so I won't read that again. I think what's important is that we've looked at master schedules, programs, staffing patterns, student data, and really identified what we're going to talk about tonight, programmatic and staffing priorities based on all of that information that we think are going to make meaningful systemic improvements while also remaining fiscally responsible. So we're going to talk about budget neutral changes tonight that have not caused the budget to increase at all, that we are able to find and use money that we already have allocated in the budget without increasing any of these lines or increasing that number. The second bullet speaks to next week, which we have front-loaded with the committee a couple times already, that we do have a 14% increase coming at us from the state legislature around private school placements for special ed. And then we also have the cost of fuel and power that has gone up quite a bit to run any building. So those 2 drivers, the 14% special ed increase equates to about $200,000. And the increase in the cost of fuel and power in general is projected to be around $120,000 or a little bit more. So we're looking on average to close a $320,000 budget gap that is not the result of programming changes, not the result of staffing patterns. It's simply the result of these 2 unknown drivers that have hit us this year. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the school choice money and some other ways to close that gap moving forward. So we did talk about the number, I believe, in our last meeting, but we have refined this, and on the next slide in a minute, we're going to talk about what it looks like on the spreadsheet. But the proposed school budget is just $16.7 million, with a request for a town appropriation of $13.9. So it's an increase of 2.5% from last year's budget. In order to get to that number, that's where the $320,000 cut has to happen. So we need to make the $320,000 move in order to get to this 2.5. We believe that the 2.5% is responsible. We believe it is not add-ons, it is not extra, it is not fluff, it is truly getting us to where we need to go to meet the requirements that the Department of Education has put before us for graduation requirements, and we believe that it prepares our kids for college and career in a competitive manner, which is our charge in Rockport. We want to make sure we're providing the best education we can in a comparable way to other public schools around us. So we believe the 2.5 is respectful for the community ask, and we believe that that will get us to where we need to get to. And again, the second paragraph simply talks about the budget gap and the 2 drivers that we'll focus on in detail next week. So you're familiar with this kind of page, and I'll let June speak to this if you all have any questions around this. We had a similar one about a month ago. We have refined this. This is fully representative now of the ask. So you'll see the big picture buckets on the left-hand side. You'll see where the offsets are. You'll see it comes down to the 2.5 contribution, which gets us to that 13,952 and change. And so this is pretty self-explanatory. I think you're used to seeing this kind of a page. Some of the places to slow down on, if you take a look at that special ed student services, you'll see that 21.78% increase, which includes some of the things we just talked about. You'll see the OMR increase, which talks about the fuel and the power. You'll see a district increase, that 9.1, where you'll see the schools go down 8.84, 1.90, or have a minimal increase of 1.35. When you get the full budget sheets next week, the reason behind that, I think I talked about this when I first interviewed and took the position, that I was concerned that we didn't have line items for curriculum review and adoption. So what we've done is we've worked out an opportunity to take money from each of the elementary, the middle school, and the high school's budgets to put them into a district line, K-12 for curriculum review and adoption. It's a modest number, around $40,000 or so. Love to see that number be larger, quite honestly, but with the way we presented and built the budget, we'll make do with that number for now, and that will allow us to take a look systemically at curriculum review and adoption instead of pockets doing something at the elementary or something at the high school. So we'll start talking about literacy most likely and ELA in reading and writing programs right out of the gate next year, minimally K-8, and see what that looks like at the high school as well. So that's a big change for us. That's nice to have that. So I don't want anybody to see that 9.1 increase and think it's extra money. It's been money that's been moved from one location to another. I think that kind of hits. The other one we talked about, I believe, at our last meeting, Mr. Chair, is the athletic increase. And so the athletic increase represents more of a true representation of how our current budget is built. So it's just as representative as possible of our staffing patterns and our athletic needs. So that's why, while it looks like an increase, it's just more reflective of the actual number that we need to use moving forward. So any thoughts, questions, concerns on this particular page?
I don't think so, because I think we've been looking at this page for quite a while,
Okay.
so
Yeah,
no
good.
real surprises here.
Okay. So this section takes us to the budget neutral programming and staffing additions. These are the proud moments of the budget development phase. That is why we've kind of chunked this into 2 nights. There's a lot of hard work being done by some great educators in this district, and we want to be able to celebrate and show you that we do believe we can put together a fiscally responsible budget that still moves the district forward and reacts to the needs of our students. So I'll take some time and step through each one of these, if that's okay tonight, and maybe we go one at a time with questions. That way we don't just hit the whole list. The first one that we are super, super proud of is Principal Rose and I have spent a lot of time talking with a regional rep from Project Lead the Way. Project Lead the Way is a national organization that supports STEM partnering and STEM initiatives, K-12 across New England, and really I think they're all across the country at this point. And so we are ready to execute a contract for next year that will allow us to have courses in engineering. We'll be able to have an introduction to engineering course, a computer science principles course, an environmental sustainability course, and a human body systems course. This partnership will provide our faculty with professional development and resources that support our ability to do this. And as a result, for the first time in many, many years, students at Rockport High School will have a comprehensive STEM offering. So if the child has that lean and the student wants to look at computer science, engineering, biomed, majors at the college level, we will be finally prepared to offer those courses to these students. All of that is budget neutral. We're going to use existing curriculum budget. We're going to get some generous help, I think, from the technology department to whatever extent they can support this work. And we are looking at grants with the help of Project Lead the Way and competitive grants as well to help us make this happen. So in your drive, I believe there's a couple PDFs that you can take a look at when you'd like to, that kind of explain the program overview to you. But just so that the public has a quick commercial on this, Project Lead the Way at the high school level splits it into 3 domains. There's a computer science domain, an engineering domain, and a biomedical science domain. So we're going to make sure we have course offerings in year 1 in all 3 of those domains. And it's going to be a 2-year implementation. So in year 2, we're going to implement a minimum of 2 more courses, and we hope that one of them will create a pathway for seniors to have some kind of culminating activity at the end. that will meet their needs. So theoretically, a student could take 3, 4, or 5 of these in a sequence over so many years. We feel like we've had a lot of conversations with department heads at the high school around creating opportunities for our juniors and seniors to lean in to their desired areas. And so that if they take courses they need to take freshman and sophomore year, and they start to realize I have a STEM lean or a history lean or a music lean or an English lean, we'd like to make sure our electives and our course offerings support that lean so that they're more prepared for college and career in that area. And if they don't lean, that's okay, because many of us go to college without knowing or go into the workforce without totally knowing what we want to do. And if that's okay, then we have a good plethora of options for students. So I'll pause there. Any questions about this program?
Is this more of an augmentation or a replacement, or how do you see it working? Because
Yeah. So, and correct me if I'm wrong. In place of the STEM classes that we currently offer, we believe it's replacement. So we will have full professional development and full program adoption of their curriculum with trained teachers ready to go with that in September. In other areas, we do offer some courses that kind of connect to the human body systems work and some that a little bit connect to computer science. But we've had a lot of conversations about fidelity of implementation. So I believe we're going to try to go full board with implementation of all of these, and you'll see all of that change in our course selection process. Yeah.
Does this tie in with AP or supplants AP?
Neither. Neither technically. So we will continue to have our high-end AP courses. Some of these students will take 2 or 3 of these courses and continue with AP. Am I correct there? Yeah. So Project Lead the Way sets you up for authentic, real-life application and learning, and we do believe we'll see some benefits at the AP level of students studying that rigorously. You will also see in the supplemental documents that I gave you that they have a middle school and an elementary model. A lot of times when you implement this kind of work in education, you start at the bottom and you build from the bottom up. We're doing it exactly the opposite of the normal way you would do it in education, purposefully, because I feel like, and we feel like, we can't wait another year for another group of sophomores, juniors, and seniors to come through and not be able to be prepared with this coursework. So we're going to go all in at the high school. Then we'll take a look at our middle school programming and see if we can continue the partnership and expand it down and ultimately have a Project Lead the Way program that goes K to 12. Which, if you've seen the standards coming out of the state, they have something called CS for All that's come out. There's a big push to have computer science for all students. I mean, we've got 5-year-olds making apps, so we need to get caught up and make sure we're supporting these kids. You good on that one? The second one is the ability to put a full-time middle school, high school course teacher in place for next year. This is due to an anticipated retirement in the department, so we are able to increase this position from a 0.7 FTE to a full-time position with no budgetary increase, basically based on the salary levels of someone going out for someone coming in. Really excited about this because it will finally offer a balanced menu of performance offerings 6 to 12. So we'll have the same amount of FTEs in all 3 performance music areas, which will allow us theoretically to offer more similar amounts of programming for kids. So that's really kind of a nice value added to our current program. The third one on here is a 0.8 adjustment counselor. We currently have a 0.8 adjustment counselor at the elementary school that is funded through ESSER funds. Lots of conversations around the social emotional needs of our kids continue to happen across all schools in the Commonwealth. This is a position that we really decided as leadership team, after hearing from the elementary leadership team, that we can't let go. And that's how it was designed. It was designed to just kind of fade away after the grant money was gone. So we've taken a hard look at class size in the district. We know we have some declining enrollment across the Commonwealth, not just in Rockport, and across New England and across the country, and we'll dive deeply into that next week. But the short version of this tonight is that we plan to reallocate 1 elementary teaching position, 1 FTE, from one of the grade levels, and that reallocation of FTE will allow us to fund the adjustment council position within our operating budget next year. Big benefit for kids. This position has been currently vital to supporting the social needs of our kids, and we just feel like the progress we've made with some of those kids and the needs that we still see coming up through the pipeline, we're not in a position where we can afford to have that position disappear right now. Thoughts on that one? Yep.
Is this person focused Sorry about that. I know there's been a lot of talk when we didn't have this position about how it was hard to focus on tier 3 supports, kind of for the whole student body. And so is this person just sort of as needed? Are they more on the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3? Where is their focus?
I'm going to defer to the elementary school. If you want to, one of you want to answer that at the mic? Sorry.
They're tier 1, 2, and 3. They're sharing the caseload with the other full-time adjustment counselors, so they're providing IEP services and pull-out services for students. So they're full-blown integrated into the entire program of social emotional learning. What we do hope to do more of is more of that tier 1 classroom.
Tier 1. I'm sorry, I had it backwards. I was saying tier 3 when I meant tier 1. Thank you, Judy.
Yeah, and we've talked both at the elementary school and the middle school about having some kind of partnership where we get the counselors more into the tier 1 level, more in the classroom work, more supporting the teaching and learning, so that kids can demonstrate the skills that they're developing with the help of that professional in real time, authentically in the classroom setting. I think it's kind of a blend of both. It's a blend of a little pull out and a little push in, and that I think it was a heavy discussion in the room, but I don't think it took a long time for us to come to consensus on this one. This next one is a .6 elementary speech and language pathologist position. We currently employ a 1.0 speech language pathology assistant, SLPA, and we do that through contracted services. So by reallocating the 1.0 FTE, the district will be able to hire a .6 FTE speech language pathologist. They're two different positions. The SLP is much more clinical, much more ability to deliver services, do assessments, and meet the needs of kids at a higher level. And obviously, because that position pays more than the assistant position, it comes in as a .6. I'd like it to be recognized that we're not just saying we want to go 1.0 to 1.0. So we've taken a good look at the needs of kids. We believe that if we have a high-end professional in this position, the .6 will help us meet the needs. So we're not doing an over-ask here. We're really, so it looks like you're going from a 1.0 to a .6, but we're going way up in the clinical skill sets of the position, which is going to be beneficial long-term. And we do have a specific population of students with a much higher level of clinical need. The next one is a really big programmatic shift and addition for us. District has identified the need to develop a behavioral intervention program for students who are demonstrating dysregulation, disruptive behaviors, which tend to impede their academic and social progress. Probably could benefit K to 12, but we see an immediate need and immediate ability to address the growth of students in this area at the elementary and the middle school. So the plan right now is to develop a behavioral intervention program at the elementary school and at the middle school. And by reallocating one FTE position in the district, which we'll hear more about next week, we will then seek to hire a BCBA, a board-certified behavioral analyst, which will help develop and oversee the program. This person will provide consultation and support to staff, and they could provide direct supports to students as necessary. So that one person will help us build this behavior program in both schools. We will then take two FTEs, two special education positions, one at the elementary school and one at the middle school that currently exist, current people. And those jobs will change from their current job description, and there will be special educators in the program instead of in where they are currently. So there'll be someone overseeing the program from a behavioral standpoint. There'll be a special education teacher as the lead teacher in each room. And then we'll take, could be 1, 2, 3, however many paraprofessionals it will take to meet the needs of these students in this kind of a program based on the profile of the student and what that dictates. We have met with everybody individually around these moves. The special ed team at both buildings have met. People are aware that these moves are happening. I don't think there's any disagreement at all that we have a population of students that we have to take better care of. The other anticipated positive consequence of this move is there are people right now, other professional educators, who are managing these behaviors in these students. And as a result of them managing the behaviors in these students, they're not attending to other specific roles. And so this is going to help. It's kind of a twofer. It's going to help us get those people back to where they need to be, and it's going to get us some professional support for students who desperately need it. So this will come from the salary of one position to be announced next week. This will be part of our special education budget and the salaries of the current special ed teachers and paraprofessionals, which are already budgeted for. So I'm really, really proud of the work the leadership team did around this one. We're talking about a full program to support children who truly need it at a young age so that we can continue to get them engaged academically and socially, emotionally in the classroom. And it's budget neutral at this point. Thoughts, questions about this one?
Just have a question. So these paraprofessionals have been supporting
Yeah,
teaching in the classrooms and now won't be doing that.
correct.
So
we will.
So the redirection of behavior will be enough to make up for that, or?
We believe we have enough paraprofessionals to still cover
Okay.
all of our students in the classroom. The other thing, thank you for bringing up the paraprofessionals. The other thing I think I skipped over was there will be some training. So you can get what's called RBT training for paraprofessionals. That's registered behavioral therapist. So we will invest in whichever paraprofessionals are in this program. They will become trained as RBTs, which is an extra credential to help you manage students with behaviors around behavior management programs, token reward systems, and make sure we can work collaboratively with the special educator, with the classroom teachers, and with the behaviorist to support these kids. Yep.
Can you just go over again how those special education teachers, so I get one at the elementary and one at the middle school,
Yeah.
are sort of being reallocated,
Yeah.
I guess, or
Redeployed. Yep.
sort of being used differently.
Yep.
And then you said something about kind of reporting differently, or how is the structure going to?
So the BCBA will be the professional behaviorist who builds and oversees the program, because that's the professional behaviorist. That person will then provide professional development, support, and training to our two special education teachers, who are professional special education teachers, but might need to gap fill their knowledge and their skill sets around specific behavioral intervention work.
Those that the BCBA would be working with K through 8.
Yeah, right now K through 8, but I would think the high school will also benefit from that position. Yeah. And ultimately, we want to sort of build it and be responsive to the needs of a certain population of kids, but that population of kids gets older every year. So I do anticipate that eventually it becomes a K-12 program. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And then, and I guess, so those special ed teachers will still be working in the middle school and or elementary school.
Yep, full-time.
Depending on both.
Yep.
Full time.
Yep.
So it's just, instead of being necessarily in one or two classrooms, they may be allocated.
Yeah, right now the
throughout.
person might be a 6th grade special education teacher. Instead, they're going to be in the behavior program, which is not named or modeled yet, but yes.
And then the para professionals, those are also existing positions now, again, just sort of being used in
a different
this
way.
Different way.
Yep.
Again, kind of under the BCBA.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
And this is a separate. Oh, thank you. I'm out of practice. This is a separate program, or like a behavioral unit type versus.
So it's based on inclusionary practices. So the real intended outcome is to get students to remain in
Right.
inclusionary classrooms. But we know that some students manifest differently for a lot of reasons, and those manifestations make it challenging for them to stay in a classroom. They have to reset. They have to come out and go back. Many schools wind up, for lack of a better term, kicking a kid out of a class. They come down to administrator. A lot of us look at punitive offerings, which is not clinically solid in the response. So as we look at restorative practices, and I think I talked about that about 2 meetings ago, we're about to kick that work off with our consultant in January. The whole district will be looking at restorative practices. This feeds right into that work. So this becomes a home base, no different than a learning center on grade level does for a special ed student. So they have that comfort zone, that relationship place. They have that place where they can come and sort of de-escalate. They can apply their learned skills. They can get some coaching from the RBT, the special ed teacher, or the behaviorist, depending what's appropriate. Those people can then debrief with the teacher back in the classroom and have some kind of articulated plan on paper or verbally to figure out how to get the child back in when appropriate. So it becomes really a nice home base for that child. Yeah.
I didn't, and I'm not saying that they wouldn't be involved. I just didn't see in here a role in addition to like token systems and behavioral interventions, the role of the counselor
Yep.
to sort of address all the underlying things.
Yeah, so my guess is as the BCBA builds the program, and again, some of that's dictated through a child's IEP as well, right? So no doubt that the counselor will be involved in it, but the counselor is assigned to all children in the school, and then meets the needs of certain kids more robustly than others.
And their
Yeah,
IEP.
right.
And so kids would come into this program with an IEP. Or not necessarily. It could be a 504.
Not
it could
not
be a-
necessarily. Yep. And it could be long, right? It could be long term. It could be short term. It could, it could. I'm trying to be careful with profiles, right? But it could be that something's going on in our family structure that's causing a child to manifest that we need to address, and that's a short term intervention. And we want professional behaviorists and trained RBTs and a place where kids feel taken care of to help support that child. Others, it could be a long term disability.
And Mark, it feels like embedded in this sort of coordinated collective effort with restructuring and more certification. I think the hope would be that the professionals who provide these services also feel more refreshed, supported, more tool sets to apply. I mean,
Absolutely.
it seems embedded in there is sort of a professional acknowledgement, recognition, and visible support to help them address the challenges that maybe have been hard to do and as disparately deployed resources.
Yeah, and we've struggled this year in a couple major ways, taking care of the needs of certain kids, and it is not at the fault of hardworking professionals. It's just at a lack of structure.
Yeah.
So we just want to put the structure in place.
Good. That looks great.
This next one allows us to bring back middle school and high school assistant principals. One of the first things as I came into the district and started kind of going on my listening tour and my visual tour, I suppose, of how we're operating the district is to have a dean position that's in the union. Has become interesting and, dare I say, problematic at times. If you're really going in a restorative justice direction, which we are, part of that model means involving the relationship between the teacher and the student, right? That's part of the core, right? That relationship between the student and the teacher. And so right now we have union members who are working with children who struggle in a classroom, but then it's technically they should not be engaging in a conversation with a peer in their union about that particular person's practice. And so we've put deans in a position where I just don't think they can do the job that we actually need them to do. I would also like to say that we've started some training and we need to continue it once the budget cycle settles. We started some really good collaborative work as a leadership team around observational practices and what our look-fors are and how we can give meaningful feedback to our educators. And to put that all on one principle, that's a lot of feedback and a lot of professional coverage. So this will allow us to have two professionals to support teaching and learning in a way that we have not been able to do that. This is not a new model to Rockport. My understanding is 5 or 6 years ago the model was there and then it shifted, and so I believe it's shifted on multiple occasions in the past so many years. So we'll reclassify the middle school dean high school position as assistant principals. We'll do a posting. Those will be posted as new positions. And this is budget neutral simply because we have reduction in lane and movement and contract settlements coming up. And we believe that all of the differentials in the salaries will be covered within the existing budget. So I don't want this to be perceived as adding administration in my first year and getting administratively heavy. I am professionally confident in the need for these positions to help us support students, to build relationships, and to talk about restorative practices, to better be legally prepared to deal with some of the things we deal with. I presented to you a month ago the changes in the law around suspensions. That has changed how we deal with students. And right now, the principal has to be in a lot of those situations. The principal then cannot be the appeal if they're in the room. And that makes me the appeal because there's no assistant superintendent. So we're trying to build some good steps and processes in to take care of kids when they get to that level. And I do believe that this is the right move.
In addition, an assistant principal would be able to do evaluations and provide feedback to teachers as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Observe classes and provide
It gives the
positive
principal a
feedback.
second person.
Professional development wise, it's also
Yep,
going to help
absolutely,
all the existing.
absolutely. Yep, yep. Thank you. Couple other, we're good on that one, sorry. Yeah. Couple other changes for reclassification purposes. Currently have an administrative assistant position in the student services office. We would like to reclassify that as an executive assistant to the director of student services, similar to how Ms. Ogier is classified in central office. I have a professional belief and opinion that it is best practice to have everyone in central office in a non-union position. They are highly confidential situations all the time there. And I believe this puts us in, legally in a better position and professionally in a better position to support the work of central office and ultimately of the whole district. I have already met with the unions around these changes. And so we've had those conversations already transparently with union leadership, so that every one of these on this page, actually, matter of fact, we've already discussed with the union leadership. And all of them have been front-loaded. And I'd like to thank both unions for working collaboratively with us on these changes, because had that not been the case, it might be difficult to do some of this work. The second one is a central office administrative assistant. We currently have a student services clerk. We'll reclassify that position as well as a central office administrative assistant. There's a lot of work coming in, bills, payroll, things that have to get done that fall to a high level administrator sometimes, that don't that pull that high level administrator away from the work that we need that person to do. So this will allow us to gap fill, and this person, instead of being assigned to student services where that clerk is currently assigned, they will cover all of central office. We'll write a new job description that will be a little more broad-based and allow us to get some of that admin support that I believe we really need to make some of the changes we're trying to make systemically. We're trying to look at systemic hiring practices, systemic enrollment practices, and some of that work will be more manageable if this happens. And then the last one, elementary school office clerk. We'd like to reclassify that as an elementary school office clerk as opposed to the teacher clerk. That one will remain in the union. But if you've been in the elementary school, it's a whole nother world in the morning than it is at the middle school and the high school. I mean, each one of them has their own version of chaos. But I would argue, I suppose, but the elementary school, I was a parent of two elementary schoolers, so I guess I'm picking on myself. When you're an elementary school parent, you tend to manifest as an elementary school child. Sometimes when you come into the office, you sometimes look like a mess. You're coming in fast. Your kid's falling down. Sneakers are untied. You're running around. It's different in the morning and the afternoon at an elementary school than it is in any other school. That person really, really is a lifeline of support to the office. That doesn't mean we don't need the person in the middle of the day, but there are two major moments of the day where that's a crucial change. So instead of having that person focusing on clerking for teachers who do have prep time and who I believe we can still give them some support in these roles, just not dictated the way it's currently dictated. This gives our principal and our assistant principal some opportunity to set the office up in a probably a little better way for parents and students at our elementary school. So really excited about all of these that we've talked about, but to reclassify positions takes collaboration with the union, and it takes some thoughtfulness on the part of the administrative team to figure out what we really do need and don't need. So I'd like to thank the union for that work, thank the leadership team for coming to consensus on some of this work. And I do feel like this will put us in a good position as we move forward. So any questions about these?
No, but I think it's right to acknowledge the administrative team, and also it's upsetting if you've been in a role for a number of years to suddenly find yourself having to consider a different type of role or restructuring. But I think, I have no doubt that the administrative team has been both thoughtful and humane in trying to consider what it's like to be in one of these positions. And also, just as a dispatch from the other world outside of education, I think you've probably been more thoughtful and gentle than perhaps what happens in the outside world. So just sort of an appreciation and encouragement for thanking you to doing that.
So I guess before we go to the next slide and before we talk a little bit more about the next phases of the budget presentations and development. I don't know that we'll get to do this too much next week. I want to pause on these 3 slides again and just say there is a lot of value added in this budget. Everything presented tonight is value added that's budget neutral. I think that's worth celebrating. I think it's worth recognizing, and I think it's worth reflecting upon the statements at the beginning of this meeting that we can be fiscally responsible, fiscally conservative, and still move forward as a district. And these 3 slides demonstrate some serious movement in a short period of time, particularly around programming for students. And we are proud of that work, and we'll continue to push every year around making sure if we have to address reduction in force, that we are also addressing growth and reallocation of staff in an appropriate way. So I know next week's conversation is going to be around other topics, so I just want us to pause for a second and just recognize this work.
Well, and I think we've often had the comment, often in the heat of override discussions than the actual effort, we don't necessarily communicate after it's passed successfully. So what did we get out of that besides, the school surviving and the status quo? And I think the 3 or 4 pages you just shared indicate these are some of the things that are happening that better serve the student population, and that's something worth celebrating.
Can you also talk for just a moment about how some of these reclassifications came, I guess, about, and knowing that you're working on the listening tour and the surveys and the focus groups, and I know you're going to be presenting later this year about some of those. So I imagine that you relied heavily on the leadership team for a lot of this. Can you just talk a little bit about
so I
that?
relied heavily on the feedback leadership team. Everything we've done has been collaborative around developing the budget and the impact. Secondarily, it's just the interesting timing of this particular community. We happen to have, I think, one of, if not the earliest town meeting in the Commonwealth. So because of that, our budget cycle starts super early. I've been in 5 other districts where we aren't even talking about budget until the 1st of January or later. I have friends that haven't even uttered the word yet. They'll do it in February. So had we not been on that aggressive cycle as a community, you would have heard my report of entry plan findings in March, which you're going to hear, and some of this would have been pretty authentic coming out. So you're still going to hear it, but it's just baked into the budget now because I don't think we're in a position where we can wait on any of this work. The leadership team has been immensely supportive. Teachers, community members who I've met with in focus groups, the survey data, and really my walkabouts and listening have really allowed me to work with the team and figure out that we could keep going, right? But I also think you've got to kind of stop and reflect and do good work. And I think if we really work hard on this, along with the restorative practices work, and along with some good curriculum review cycle, which is why that money's budgeted that way, that's a pretty heavy lift for year 2 as a new team together, and we'll get it done.
So I want to thank you all for this thoughtful work too, because, I'm in my 9th year here, and a lot of the things that I think have been preventing holistic student success has been some of those behavioral components. And so I see in these changes, what you say is one of the goals. It has always been a goal, but maybe this is going to be how we get there, where we're going to help students become successful in their education. And I think hopefully help teachers spend more time teaching and less time with behavioral management, which is fantastic. And I hope continues to change the culture of the school in positive ways. But then also, as Mark pointed out, it's being done, I think, in a pretty thoughtful way, in that many of these changes are always scary for these staff that are being changed, but many of these changes include the kind of professional development that will help these professionals if they're interested in other career options later on. So there's a lot of growth and investment in these particular staffs.
We will be able to leverage the BCBA, talking about professional development too, to work on half days or even work during PLCs or common planning time with teachers in the classroom. So that, I've seen that position in some districts really be a massive value added. So yes, they build and oversee a program. Yes, they can work directly with kids and support the staff in that small program, but they could lead an entire professional development on a half day on how to manage disruptive behaviors in the classroom, for example. We haven't done, I'm surmising that we haven't done a lot of that PD work in the district over time. So, and if we have, it's clearly necessary work to do again. So I think we could leverage that BCBA in a lot of ways for PD. Good. So on the next page, I know I apologize for the small font. This is a snapshot of the table of contents. The full budget book that you'll be privy to very soon, I believe, is up to 48 pages. It's a pretty thorough narrative. And so I just wanted you to see where we're going to go next week. So we will literally step through the whole budget book next week, one page at a time. We will not read the whole thing out loud to each other or to the public. We will skim through some of it, and other pages we will stop on very thoughtfully and really dissect and disseminate for the community and for the committee. But if you look under the executive summary, there's some spots in there. We talked about programmatic and staffing priorities tonight. Those slide decks came out of those pages. The big one will be strategies for closing the FY24 budget gap. That will be the heaviest part of next week's conversation. We've done a really good deep dive into student enrollment. We paid a third-party organization. I think I mentioned this in one of my previous meetings. So we've partnered with NESDEC and become a NESDEC member school district. And part of that, we get a enrollment projection report every single year. So this is not the superintendent's numbers. This is not some community members' numbers. This is not another organization's numbers. This is a third-party look at everything: birth rates, housing, amount of children. They do comps against other communities, comps against the state, comps against New England, comps against the United States. And the short version of this is, when we talk about declining enrollment, this is not a Rockport issue. This is a New England issue really highly, and then it becomes a United States issue. And I've said in about 3 forums today, my wife is one of 5 children. I'm one of 4 children. People aren't doing that anymore. It's too expensive to have that many kids. And then New England is expensive, and Massachusetts is expensive, and to some extent Rockport is an expensive place for certain families to be raised. So declining enrollment is not unique to Rockport. So when we take a deep dive into the report, and when we look at the student enrollment data in the budget book next week, we'll have a good conversation about how the district will respond to that. We will see the flat line, that there is a 10-year projection where we do believe it does start to flatline, and it is predicated on maintaining our 25% of school choice, which I do believe is maintainable at this point. So we'll talk pretty heavily about that information. We'll talk about some future budget considerations, and then you'll see the deep dive in the financial pages. You'll see all of the summary of expenses, summary of revenues, and then all of the cost centers like you're used to seeing every year in the Excel spreadsheet. All of that will be embedded in the book, and we can go right through every one of those, and June and I can step through the whys behind any of the line items and any of the cost centers that you have questions about. And then that'll be the work next week, and hopefully make a motion to support the budget as presented, and move from there.
So maybe just to add to that, Mark, I think the committee has not seen this. I've seen it because you
Yep.
needed a native guide to
Correct.
go from where we were
Correct.
to where we wanted to be. What we've had for the past 10 years is full transparency of the budget, in the sense that you could track or look up every dime being spent at the school, but you didn't necessarily have ease of access. So if you weren't very comfortable looking at an Excel sheet, or even if you were, you had to spend a lot of quality time immersing yourself in that documentation to decide that you knew what you were seeing and what it was doing. So the thought with this budget booklet also, that spreadsheet didn't do a great job of, it did a great job of telling you how much things cost, but it didn't tell you anything about the value of the school system in the community, and it didn't have all of the framework around it to let you understand the context necessarily. So the point of this booklet is to have an easy access document that anybody in the public could pick up, follow, and understand how does this come together, what is it they're trying to achieve, and what do I get for my tax dollar. So a lot of effort has been poured into this. The basis of this has been a national award-winning version of this that we've scaled down to be appropriate for Rockport's size. We don't have a $500 million budget, but we do have the same need to give the best communication we can out to the community, particularly after an override. So the premise here is as it's presented to the school committee to do its review, past the point of the debate and hopefully approval, this moves on as a single piece to the Board of Selectmen. This moves on as a single piece to the Finance Committee for the discussions, and this is available to the public in a hard copy as well as online format, so that if you want to know in an easy way what your money is getting and where it's going, this will give it to you. So, I'm very proud of what's going to be presented next week. Hopefully it'll be finished by next week. No, it'll be finished by next
It will
week.
be.
And it really addresses a lot of the things that we've had to answer to over the last decade. So the report that Mark is mentioning, I mean, we've had people have their own take on what the profile and what the demographics. We had the case study, which through COVID needed to have some numbers freshened up. This report does it. It does it in a way that's easily digestible. It does it with charts. And it's really a blueprint for having the discussions over the next 5 to 10 years about what does the school system in Rockport look like. So I think it's got legs in the sense that, everybody who is interested in Rockport ultimately will have access to this, and I think it'll be a great tool for understanding where we're going. And once it's been created, next year it'll be much more straightforward to adopt and adapt this. So really excited about seeing this, although the reality is, as Mark is pointing out, with a budget gap that is not within our control, we've really had to make some hard decisions, and those decisions really these are really proposals for the school committee to review and potentially adopt. But, they've kept as their focus, what does the student need? What is the student usage rate? What is the comparables to districts of a similar size? What is the state average? So it's about the furthest thing from a knee-jerk reaction that you could find. And, I think my understanding is that the very format of this was used as an example for a committee of 30 new superintendents with their mentor to demonstrate to them this is one of the best ways you could go about this process in terms of reaching out. So really excited to share it. Not so excited about the difficult decisions that the administrative team is proposing, but it's real life, and I think the public will be impressed with what they receive.
Can I just ask, we'll get a draft
You will.
this for the weekend?
Yep.
Or? Okay, good, because my work days are
Yes.
tough.
Very soon.
Thank you.
So, with that being said,
So we have no new business, Mr. Chair, but when you go to finance, in your drive, June has put together the fund flow for the end of year. There are 2 formats in there, so if you haven't looked at it, take some time and look at it between now and next week. But I'll let you explain the formats a little more, since I can't. You created them, so but there are two different formats that I think you can choose from, and one is a little more detailed than the other at this point.
Yeah. I'll correct you. It's the December look.
Thank
We
you.
already did the year end
Thank
in
you.
the old format, and we've already closed that out. So this is the December 31st look. What we did was we created the traditional fund flow, but compacted it, moved it more into smaller groups of less lines. And then on the second choice is to look like the budget sheet, summary sheet that you saw. And we've created a fund flow in that exact manner. So that is what you're used to. So some of you are used to the fund flow. You have that option, just a little more contracted and maybe a little simpler to reach through. And then for some of you that prefer the budget look of the summary page, we created that for you as well.
I do have a quick question. The 10A, I think it is the more detailed one.
Yep.
The balance, which is in some places red, is red relative to what? To last year's Q2, or to what you expected for Q2?
No, just what we expected at the end of the year.
So it's
So
already
if
in a
you have,
deficit in
you
the second
have
quarter?
the same columns before is what we've expended to date. what we project that we will need through the rest of the year, and then the balance.
Okay, so
Now.
it's the projected.
Yes,
Got
encumbered
it.
is projected.
Okay, thank you.
And so the balance can be
Balance is-
negative in some categories, and that's also because this is everything. So some of those charges will be charged off to a grant. Some go off to
Okay.
school choice, some to circuit breaker. But we're trying to give you a true everything picture up top.
So encumbered is projected, and the balance is projected balance if the
Yes.
encumbered happens, and of
Yes,
course it
as we-
doesn't take into
yes,
account. Got it.
exactly.
Thank you.
Can you say that one more time? Encumbered
Is encumbered is your projected what we plan to spend on the rest of the year in that category.
is the
Projected.
Budget minus expended minus encumbered. So at the end of the year, that category would be,
so that'll be so that's what I want to clarify. The balance will be end of the year.
And some of that will be
Yes.
offset by grants.
and there's many
that
different
are
offsets. As you see in the budget, as we do, there's many offsets. There's also additional ones that come in as we receive competitive grants, or if our school choice numbers are up, or our circuit breaker allows for, or if we need, worst case, if we needed to dip into our reserve. Also, the town's generous assistance with the sped reserve fund. That allows those numbers to drop in the special ed category if we are overdrawn.
Thank you.
Yeah, it looks really nice, June.
Thank you.
Really worked on this, I can tell. Yeah.
Active way.
Digestible.
And it's really easy to go between the two, which is awesome.
So if that's okay, we'll continue with these two in this style going forward for the next quarter, if that's okay with everyone.
Yeah,
Is-
they look great.
Is it hard for you to do both?
It is, but it's okay. Don't worry about it. I think, it's just new, and as quarters go along, it's easier and easier, right? For everybody. So it's fine. It's not days worth of extra work, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, it really does a nice job. Good.
So that is all we have prior to school committee discussion, Mr. Chair.
Are there any items we wanted to discuss as walk-on items? None over there, none to my left, none to my right. Okay, so prior to adjournment, we do have a need for executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, and we'll not resume back into open session. We'll just close the meeting out from there. So I'm going to ask for a motion to discuss, to adjourn to executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, and to close the meeting from that executive session.
So moved. Second.
Okay, so this is a voice call vote. Kelly, yes.
Coogan, yes.
Lorenz, yes.
Riley, yes.
All right, good job.
Thank you.